Welcome to the Matt Sager Podcast, Hump Day, Wednesday, March 27th of 2019. Hope your week is going swimmingly so far, and that the rest of it is smooth sailing. Got a lot of water metaphors on the brain today, not quite sure why. Just a brief wrap-up of news. Stuff that might have gone unnoticed in your feeds today and on other podcasts. Couple of very new developments. One quite exciting, the other more than a little disappointing. And it's a follow-up to some news I've covered on the Matt Sager podcast in recent times, like within the last couple of weeks. The first is brand new and pertaining to a Marvel movie we haven't talked about on this show yet, I believe, but one that I'm quite excited about. Marvel is bringing the Eternals to the big screen. That is huge as part of their post-Endgame lineup. One of the things it looks like they're doing is, minor spoiler alert here, for what is likely to be the Marvel Universe, if not post-Endgame, possibly even during Endgame, it'll be revealed. But they're going to open up the whole multiverse. You might have heard, for instance, that on Disney Plus, when it launches, there's going to be a What If series. What If is sort of this exploration of the many different universes of Marvel, the alternate timelines, alternate universes, where what if Karen Page never died? And, many of these what ifs that were published in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s have since been mined as actual real comic book like canon. So, for instance, there was a what if Rick Jones became the Hulk, and around 2009 or 10, he briefly was a Hulk. And there was a what if Jane Foster had become Thor? This ridiculous notion in the 70s that Marvel has actually been exploring, and to great effect. But the point is that there's a multiverse out there. All these different universes where you can hop in and out of. I believe that that's going to play a major role in Endgame, but I'm really not certain. But in any case, in addition to alternate universes, alternate timelines, there's all these heroes that most of the world never gets to see, that only pop up in case of a dire emergency or if there's a god or demon to be fought. Or better yet, Celestials. Those are the kind of dangers that the Eternals bump up against. They'll fight Thor, they'll fight the Celestials, they'll even fight amongst themselves as they did in the excellent Neil Gaiman miniseries. Came out in the mid to late 2000s. I cannot recommend that highly enough. Similarly, all the Jack Kirby work on the Eternals, every appearance they made in Thor, they're fantastic, really interesting characters. And there is a movie in the very preliminary stages at Marvel, but it is part of Phase 4. The Eternals is going to be directed by Chloe Zhao, and major casting news today. Huge, really. Angelina Jolie has signed on the Eternals. This per The Hollywood Reporter, who asked Marvel what they had to say about it and who Jolie's going to play, and they wouldn't answer any questions or even reply to The Hollywood Reporter. But it is confirmed. She's also working with Disney on the upcoming Maleficent sequel, Mistress of Evil, which was going to be released this fall of 2019, but will instead be released in spring of 2020. She's also got another Disney project, a part live-action, part animated movie called The One and Only Ivan. She's also producing that. And she's got a bunch of other stuff going on, but simply with Disney alone, she's deeply embedded now. And I would say that, be it the Eternals or anything else, Angelina Jolie is not really known for small roles. Never has been. And certainly not at this stage of her career. So the question is, the log line that's available for the Eternals, the quick little elevator pitch, it's obviously going to be about much more than this, but the quick little 2-line summary that's available is that the story will be, and this is far from all it will be, of course, but it will involve, among other things, the love between Icarus, one of the big, kind of the alpha Eternal, and Circe, who, while being quite a powerful Eternal herself, loves to hang out with humans. I believe in the Neil Gaiman series, she was living among us as like a party planner and just loving it. And if I were a betting man, she's probably going to play Circe. But she could be any number of other characters, too. Not really sure who off the top of my head. I am very much leaning towards Circe. But in any case, this is the very first announcement we've got that this is even happening. So obviously there's much more news to come regarding Angelina Jolie, the Eternals, the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 4, and even Endgame. There's much we don't know. Although, my God, watch out for your Google and YouTube and like Reddit feeds. There are people, some of whom are deeply embedded and really know stuff, others of whom are very insightful and analytical, and they are dropping potential spoilers all over the place. And if that's your bag, if you're into that kind of thing, then by all means, enjoy. But if you want to go into Endgame with an open mind, then be careful. Even some of the trailers. Now, granted, the Russo brothers have made it clear that the trailers are full of red herrings, moments of false hope and false fear, that they really don't want you to know what the movie's going to be about going into it. That they want to show you the highlights, but not as so many movies do. Classic example, maybe the best example of this I've ever seen. X-Men Dark Phoenix, very prominently in recent trailers, spoils tons of major plot points about the movie. Stuff that a movie with as little going on as the Dark Phoenix Phoenix movie appears to have, based not only on what I've seen in the trailers, but based also on what test audiences are saying. They're saying, A, it's funny, and B, it's a snooze. Very little happens except this one thing, and all of a sudden that thing is featured in every trailer for Dark Phoenix. So I would say avoid that spoiler if you can, but I mean, even if you find a TV advertisement for Dark Phoenix, you're going to see a huge plot point. And apparently there's really not much else to it. Honestly, as a media professional and a citizen of the world, I don't love Disney acquiring Fox, but as an X-Men fan, I'm thrilled that Disney has taken over the Marvel franchises over at Fox. First off, the Fantastic Four, who have just been in what is 10 stages higher than a rut, or lower. It's been an abomination. And the X-Men have very swiftly fallen after a much lauded first couple of movies that kind of hold up, not so much, but, this was pre-Marvel Cinematic Universe. In that regard, the first couple of X-Men films were groundbreaking. Then they tried to do Dark Phoenix with X-Men The Last Stand, which was so bad they had to reboot the entire thing and do First Class, which was great. And then bit by bit by bit, Days of Future Past, Apocalypse, suddenly that creative universe is all dried up too. It's very clear that all of the actors involved are sick of it, have no interest in it anymore. Jennifer Lawrence has been the most vocal about that she literally signed on to play Mystique because she wanted her friend to do the movie for his career, and he said that he would only do it if she'd agree to appear in the film with him. So she did, and now she's regretting it. And that's not a good place for your big franchise to be. New Mutants, meanwhile, may or may not ever be released in any format. Maisie Williams did an interview talking about various Game of Thrones related stuff, and the New Mutants was brought up, and she said, yeah, I have no fucking clue whether it'll be released, when it will be released. It was supposed to come out in May. It's now going to be fall if we're lucky. There's all these reshoots we need to do. There's no schedule as to when or if that's going to happen. And there's been talk about maybe doing something like porting it, either as a movie or adapting it into a miniseries instead to Hulu. But first they got to get their act together, actually film the thing. There was some discussion about making it more of a horror film and doing that by doing lots of reshoots. Because so far what they filmed has been mostly sort of goofy action. None of these actors have any idea when these reshoots are going to take place, or even if. None of them have any clue about a release date, if one even exists. It's quite likely that Disney's going to look at this thing and say, yeah, you know what? We're just going to take a loss and be glad that we've made inroads with these actors and maybe bring them back. Because, there are some talented people on board this otherwise horrible looking film. And there's a great story to be had in a New Mutants movie. So maybe they'll take a look at it, have a little confab with the creative team involved, the actors at least, not necessarily the directors or writers, the people who've led it to the state it's currently in. And maybe say, listen, we're going to retool this thing, integrate the characters into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and call you back in a few months and have you come back in, see if we can't hash something out. But don't release a slapdash awful New Mutants movie. Don't make a joke out of this franchise before it has a chance to bloom. Because look what happens when you're under the Marvel Cinematic Universe umbrella. You can get some big name talent like Angelina Jolie, who is going to be in the Eternals. As we get closer, like when we get an actual release date, for instance, and even if there's more news that's made available in the coming weeks and months, I'm going to stay on this story. But again, my guess, she's going to be Circe. Can't wait to see who they cast as Icarus, Makari, any of the many Eternals who, honestly, they haven't appeared in books in a while. Not any that I'm reading anyway, so I don't really have a ton of their names readily on hand. I know that Sprite's a great one, an Eternal who's sort of cursed. It may seem like a blessing, but it really does feel more like a curse of eternal youth. Some young actor who gets that is going to have a massive launching pad for his nascent career, and that's going to be really exciting. Everything related to the Eternals looks great, so I will keep you posted on that as news develops. And now for news about which I'm much less enthusiastic, quite frankly. This, too, is a subject I've covered on the Matt Sager podcast before, and the last go-round, there ended up being some kind of decent news. Some of the cancellations were uncanceled. But having said that, Bleeding Cool, who's always the first with news good or bad about the comics industry, has unearthed yet more DC omnibuses, some of which are definitely canceled, others of which are apparently on the bubble and will likely be announced as canceled in the near future. Dan Didio has apparently chimed in saying, we may reschedule some of these books. And the last time we discussed this, they did do that. You might recall I talked about a bunch of books that had been canceled, one of them being The Absolute Swamp Thing, which was going to have all the Alan Moore stories, art by Rick Veitch and John Totalbane, and I was astonished and frankly mystified at DC's decision to pull that book, and they later reinstated it. So that may yet happen with any or all of these books. But having said that, here's the bad news about what's not coming in omnibus form from DC. First, the titles that have been canceled. Most of these really annoy me because they were books which I've been collecting the first volumes of, and which I kind of expected after sinking all this time and money into it, that I would at some point be able to get volumes 3, go from the Silver Age to the Bronze Age, to have a full collection. That is why us comic fans buy these ridiculous oversized oversized omnibuses in the first place, to get a complete run of something. So to cancel books at, for instance, Volume 3, as they did with these first two books I'm going to announce, is really lame. So Dan Didio, I sincerely hope that you reinstate these. Again, these are officially canceled. Batman Brave and the Bold, Bronze Age Omnibus, Volume 3, canceled. The first two, not only were again the beginning of a collection I'd hoped to complete, but also so much fun. It's absurd how much fun The Brave and the Bold is. Without being overly ridiculous or overly silly, it was just about the perfect comic. And it's very likely that these books will be collected instead in little trade paperbacks, which will also be available presumably on Comixology, and that's fine. But again, I would not have bought these omnibuses leading up to this if I knew that it was going to be yanked out from under me by the time they got to Volume 3, just as they did with the Bronze Age Omnibus of Justice League of America. That too, Volume 3 canceled. The next three are not so bad. One of them's kind of a disappointment, but in general, Batman Faces in the Shadows. This was not going to be an omnibus, but rather a trade paperback. I remember that storyline. I think it was very early in the New 52, and I don't know why it's listed along with the omnibuses, and I don't think it's a huge disappointment that it's been canceled, although it is always surprising when books get yanked off the schedule. One always wonders why. I'd be interested in finding out why regarding this book, but other than that, I don't care. Green Lantern Earth 1, Volume 1 trade paperback. This too, I don't really care about, but I am interested because it has apparently been canceled. Finally, this would have really been great, although much like The Dark Knight Returns, which was also recently scheduled and then canceled in an absolute edition, The Long Halloween, the amazing and tremendously influential work by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, has been collected so many times in so many different formats. It may just be that there's no new format that's going to convince enough people to buy this book yet again. Honestly, I don't know that I would have bought it yet again, but it is a shame I won't have the chance to even make that decision. So, Batman The Long Halloween, a hardcover collected under the trade dress of DC Modern Classics, that's been axed. Now, here's a bunch of books that Bleeding Cool says look like they're being canceled. Not sure what that means, where you draw the line and delineate between what is definitely canceled, although with the caveat that Dan Didio may yet step in and uncancel them, and books that merely look canceled. Bleeding Cool is very often correct, but they will occasionally give you news like this and say, it looks like this, and not make it clear what differentiates the stuff that looks canceled versus the stuff that definitely is canceled. But having said that, this is a real bummer if these turn out to be canceled. House of Secrets, Bronze Age Omnibus Volume 2, which would have collected issues 112 through 154 of the House of Secrets. I just got Volume 1, and that is terribly disappointing if true, that I won't be able to continue collecting this. It's a wonderful series, a great look at DC pre-Vertigo and their sort of mysterious horror titles. I would have loved to get Volume 2, and I hope that I get the chance. Similarly, these next two, it is frankly shocking that they're canceled, if in fact that's what they are. First one is Joker, Bronze Age Omnibus. Wow. That is serious. That's the ultimate Batman villain who for the last 11 years or so has been more popular than he's ever been, starting with the cinematic version of The Dark Knight and carrying through to all these really sick Batman stories that are being told to this day, including what I've been told repeatedly in promotional stuff from DC and by various creative friends of mine over there, that there are 3 Jokers. So why not one simple omnibus? This would have collected Batman number 252, 260, 286, 291 through 294, 321, 353, 365, and 366, and number 400. Would have also had some more, my heart just aches. The Brave and the Bold, issues 111, 118, 129, and 130, 141, 191, The Joker 1 through 10, a classic comic series that frankly doesn't get anywhere near the love and appreciation. A really early version of here's how the story looks from the bad guy's perspective kind of comic. A great and really underrated, underpromoted book. So that's a shame. It also would have collected Detective Comics number 475 and 476, 504, 526, and 532. Also some issues of Wonder Woman. Finally, this really hurts. This one makes the most sense in a way, but it is such a shame. The DC Universe by Jack Kirby, Bronze Age Omnibus. This included a lot of titles that frankly were not on anyone's radar, which is all the more reason, frankly, in my opinion, that they should have been repackaged and sold as an omnibus, because people would love this. These are, in many cases, characters without a built-in audience, but you give the name Jack Kirby to anything, and a lot of fans will open it up and take a look at it, and there's a lot that they would have found and loved in this. The Jack Kirby Bronze Age Omnibus would have included The Days of the Mob number 1, Spirit World number 1, The Demon 1 through 16, The Sandman number 1 through 6, OMAC 1 through 8, Our Fighting Forces, numbers 151 through 162. The Superpowers miniseries, 5 issues from 1984. Then again, 6 issues for the second miniseries in 1985. And then the DC First Issue Special, numbers 1, 5, and 6. DC Comics Presents number 84. Richard Dragon, Kung Fu Fighter, number 3. Oh, so many great titles. This really bumming me out. Weird Mystery Tales, numbers 1 through 3. And Forbidden Tales of the Dark Mansion, number 6. The article goes on to say that the recently released Batgirl Bronze Age Omnibus Volume 2, which is great, but it does look like it's the last omnibus featuring Bronze Age titles that's going to be released for some time. If maybe ever. These titles, there's so many of them that have been axed without really any explanation. I wonder if DC isn't just sort of reshuffling their budget and schedule for the year, and if we shouldn't just get comfortable with the fact that omnibuses may be from DC. I don't know. I don't mean to be a doomsayer here or anything, but it may be the case that these books will simply be put on hold for a while. And frankly, look, we could all save a little bit of money. I see Jack Kirby Omnibus. It's everything in me to not just click buy now. But I would like the option. And I do think that these books would have been a lot of fun. And these too may very well end up being brought back as a series of trade paperbacks, which especially if there are Comixology versions available, that is kind of a good thing. But one does like the feel of a nice hardcover in one's hands, especially these big, giant, oversized omnibuses. So if true, which it likely is, that's quite a shame. So a little bit of good news and a little bit of bad in the middle of the week today. Thank you for listening, as always, and get in touch with the Matt Sager podcast. If you got something to promote, I'd love to help you do that. If you'd like to do a cross-hosting thing, I'm very eager to look into that. So get in touch with me any old time. Email matt@mattsager.com or call me at 646-535-4788. You can also get me on social media, where on Twitter I'm @Matt Sager. On Instagram, I'm Real Matt Sager, and on Facebook, let's see, my personal page is The Matt Sager, my voiceover page is Matt Sager VO, and this podcast page is facebook.com/Matt Sager Podcast. I would love to have you join, like that page. Just come participate and be a part of the community. I'd also love for you to contribute to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Matt Sager, not including a link tonight to my merch store because I do not know what's going on with wehavemerch.com. Looks like their website is down. They haven't replied to my questions, and so I don't think I'm going to include a link to that tonight. But as for everything else, more social media handles and links, my articles and blog posts, voiceover reels and contact information, and archive back episodes of the Matt Sager podcast. You can find that and more at my website, mattsagervoiceover.com.